Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Mayor and I with me, Lindsay Khan, and Nick, the Right Honourable Nick Buckley, MBE, edition number 47 on the 8th of October, Nick.
Yep.
Welcome to, I won't say welcome.
Thank you.
And good news for our listeners, very shortly we're going to have a table here and a proper microphone. It's going to be like a proper professional studio, Nick.
It's going to look better, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we won't be quite as close as we are at the moment, which I know is upsetting some of our viewers at the moment.
Especially when you discovered what the word scissoring means.
And congratulations, Nick, because today you publish your 4th book in 4 years.
I have. I've only got a picture of it because even I've not got a copy of it yet.
Really? And it's called England, My England.
Yes.
And would you like to tell our gentle viewers what it's about?
Available on Amazon now, ebook and paperback. I started writing it just after the Southport murders.
All right.
Because everything went crazy. We had the riots. We all wanted change. There was lots of discussions. And that's when I started writing it. And I wanted to try to verbalise what I thought people were thinking in the country, which is, we love this land. We're born here. We've got connections here. You know, our ancestors are in the ground. If we don't love England, then who will love England? I specifically said England and not Britain or United Kingdom. And I addressed that in the book, why this is about England. England's a country. And it's my country. We have to save our country first before we look at saving anything else. So the first chapter is really about who's to blame, and it's Englishmen for allowing this to happen. So we all need to take some responsibility for being weaker and more pathetic than we realise we are. We've allowed this to happen, and we need to take personal responsibility. It's easy to blame feminism and the communists and this and that. We allowed this to happen in our own country. We are to blame. Second chapter is about politics. The fact now that we have career politicians instead of conviction politicians who are only interested in self-service and not serving the nation, being a public servant. And what do we do about that? So I discuss that. I talk about the rise of Reform UK. They may be a blessing at the moment, but that doesn't mean they're the future. That just means they're a tool to be used. Now, they may take us all the way, but they may not. And that's okay. We're on a journey. And to get to where we want, we might have to take a bus, a train and a taxi. So let's use what's in front of us now to take some steps forward. And at the moment, that seems to be Reform UK. But my warning is, do not be seduced by another political party who then can let us down. We support reform and use reform until they're not worthy of being supported anymore, and then we bin them. So that's the message we need to send to these other political parties. That it's not about winning us over and suddenly we're die-hard reform forever. Well, that's what got us in this place in the first place with die-hard Labour supporters and Tory supporters. I talk about the mistakes. I talk about how joining the EU basically politically killed us. Then I talk about the next chapter is about the big political problem we've got at the moment, mass migration. So I talk about why it started, how it started, the fact no politicians ever got a grip on it, the fact that the British people, English people have never voted for immigration. It was only 2 years after Windrush that the Home Office had to set up a special panel to look at immigration, because 2 years after Windrush, the people weren't happy about immigration. 2 years after Windrush. Roll on 60, 70, 80 years. We're in the same position now. So this has been a long-term problem that every political party in government has ignored. So I discussed that. Then I look at national shame. We used to be a great nation. Oh, everyone makes mistakes. Every nation's make mistakes. That's not acceptable, but it's to be expected because we're human at the end of the day. We're not perfect. But how we've let ourselves down over the last 50, 60 years through national shame is through making mistakes, but because we're run by weak men, we then hide those mistakes and don't confront those mistakes and blame other people for those mistakes. And I talk about the post office scandal, sending people to jail for an IT system. I talk about the infected blood scandal that we knew about for decades and no one did anything about it. So once we've given someone infected blood, and we didn't know about AIDS at the time, so that was understandable mistake. We didn't know. Shit, look what we've done. Stop it all. Admit our culpability. Apologise. Maybe compensation. But let's stop doing what we're doing. It went on for years after that because nobody wanted to admit the mistake. And we kept poisoning people because no one wanted to admit the mistake. I find that treasonous from the state. I'll talk about the grooming gang scandal, about how we let these girls down, how their parents let them down, how the state let them down, the police let them down, how they let themselves down. And that's a national shame that we've still not got a grips with. Then I talk about history, about how this is an amazing country with an amazing history that we need to be proud of. No other country has done what we've done, invented what we've invented. We created the modern world. I named some of the people that we need to thank. The British Empire did more good than good, more bad. We stopped the international slave trade. I talk about the Nazis being socialists. All the lies were being told now. Well, read up on the Nazis. They were socialists. Hitler kept saying, I'm a socialist. But we don't accept that anymore now.
But it was a National Socialist.
National Socialist, yeah. The only difference between him and a socialist today was he wanted socialism for his country. Socialists today want a world socialist utopia. It was only the amount of space he wanted to socialise. And the last chapter is something you mentioned, and I started writing about it. What do we do about it? You've highlighted all the problems in it. You've highlighted why we're here, why we're failing, why we're dying. But that's great. But what do we do?
Answer?
What's the answer?
Yeah.
So the last chapter is called The Resurrection. And I talk about what everybody can do, from small individuals to more powerful people, how we need to stop being afraid, being cowards. And I understand if you work for Barclays Bank, you don't want to lose your job, but how you can fight back being sneaky, how you can be a ninja, not a whinger. And the days of thinking that you have an option of not fighting back, those days are gone. Everyone has to fight back. It's up to you as an individual to work out how you can fight back. Because I don't want people at this moment in time, I don't want people losing their jobs and losing their families. Those days may come, but they're not here yet, where it's all or nothing. We can beat this if English people say, I want to save this country, and I'm now in the fight, and I'm going to start doing stuff. And if they start doing little stuff, that will encourage other people to do stuff. And next thing you know, we've got a national movement of people being proud of England. Available now on Amazon.
In all good bookshops.
No bookshops will take it. But
that sounds really, really good. I mean, just on the things like the blood scandal, do you talk about the lockdowns, which I think are one of the great national scandals in England?
So COVID is one of the sub chapters of the national shame.
Yeah.
How the government made some mistakes at the beginning, which I'm quite willing to forgive them for, but after a couple of weeks, we knew no one was dying. We knew, but then they did exactly what everyone else did. Do you know what? We just need to carry on.
Yeah.
We rather than admit a mistake and go, we're not going to stop locking you down now. We're going to stop this, stop that, because we made a mistake, but new evidence has come in. That's what leaders do. Leaders take the responsibility and go, I'm here for you, and I've made a mistake, but I did it for the best of reasons. I did it based on faulty evidence, but I made a decision for you, and it turns out it was wrong, and now I correct it. I admit it and I correct it. They didn't do that. They went on for years and years and years. Yeah, so I do discuss that.
I think that's one of the biggest scandals, those lost years, what that did to the country, what that did to our children.
All the old people who died in
all
care
the old
homes.
people that died,
all that
as well. I mean, I think it was horrendous. And nobody seems to want to talk about it now. And even Boris is now coming out saying he didn't believe in the lockdowns and all that sort of stuff.
He did it though.
But he did it. No, he did it. No, that's what I mean.
Big coward, because now he'll get some political points by saying what was going wrong. What was going wrong? You was the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So him, Robert Jenrick, I'm sick of these people coming out the woodwork now telling us that they know the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
Of course you do. You were in government and did nothing about it.
Yeah. I think one of the things I'm interested to talk about, and you kind of saying here you do have a propensity to blame us for as the normal people for like things like litter and things like that, but you're blaming us, and saying weak politicians and stuff like that. But I think my point around all that is that this government, you know, whether it's the Tories or Labour, we are no longer in control of our governments, of the people who control us. We've been voting for decades now for governments, different parties who make promises, then will not deliver those promises, and that, you know, the idea that we are living in a democracy doesn't really exist anymore. That we live in a democracy, but it's a managed democracy. And a term I've seen recently, I've been watching a guy called Ed Weinstein. He talks about managed reality, which is basically the reality we live, not just in this country, in England and in America as well, is a managed reality where there is the perception that we are in control and we're making our own choices, but we're not. And he uses a terminology which I think is interesting, which is magician's choice. So magician's choice is...
Pick a card, any card, and I make sure you pick the card I want you to pick.
Correct, yeah. So we are constantly, as a country, as individuals, presented with a magician's choice. Vote Labour and everything will be fixed. Vote Tory, everything will be fixed. Do this and we'll immigrate. And then we make a choice, and we are forced into the ultimate conclusion. And I think, you know, the resurrection, as you call it, our survival, how we get beyond this, to me involves the destruction of this non-democracy, of this illusion that we are living, this managed reality we have at the moment. Do you think that's the case? Because I think you're shifting slightly as we move forward. You've always believed that our democracy is our route out of this.
Yeah.
My argument is there is no democracy. There is no our choice. We have no choice. We have the magician's choice. So, does your resurrection involve utilising this democracy, or is it something else that we have to do?
Partly using the democracy. I give lots of tips on what people can do. I'm not at a stage where I want to destroy our democracy. It's taken us 1,000 years to get to this point now. That's how old England really is, 1,000 years old. To get to this point. And all democracies are flawed. Anything designed by man will be flawed. And it's not a perfect system, it just happens to be the best system we've ever created up to now. Destroying and tearing things down is very easy. And we never know what's going to come next. The people who want to tear things down and have that revolutionary trait and that violence will be the people who take over once you pull it down. And they're not the people we want in charge. Look what happened after the French Revolution. Mass slaughter, and then a dictator, Napoleon. We've got to be really, really careful of tearing these complicated systems down because we have no idea what will replace it. What we need to do is fix our system. Just because your car breaks down or the carburetor goes or one of your bulbs on your front light stops working, you don't get rid of your whole car. You fix the problem in the car. And that's what we need to do with our democracy in our country. We need to fix the problems. I think we've got to a stage now where, you're right, people have voted for things and we don't get what we vote for. We've got poor politicians. And people have started giving up. And because they can't visualise how to fix our problems, the answer now is, well, burn it all down and let's start again. Our problems, I still feel, are fairly easy to fix. I solve problems for a living, especially social problems. You get a complicated problem like knife crime, and you think, right, what's the problem? What's the real issue? Why they're carrying knives? Blah, blah, blah. You break it all down and you start tackling each strand of that problem. So but someone else will look at the problem and go, knife crime, what do we do? Lock up everybody with a knife.
Well, the last answer to knife crime was ban zombie knives, which is not an answer to knife crime. It's
because knives are already illegal to carry on the street. The thing that's illegal to carry, we're going to make it doubly illegal now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still don't
We're
send
not
it.
actually going to stop the person behind the knife from stabbing people. We're going to take
Yeah.
away the knife. But you're talking about don't tear down the institution that we've created or whatever. My argument is we are tearing down an illusion because we don't have democracy. This thing you say we built over 1,000 years, for me, it doesn't exist anymore. And I think, one of the, this guy Weinstein, he talks about the plebiscite, the voters, and he said there's two kinds of democracy. The democracy where the vote of the man, it counts and it's important, and then a second type of democracy where basically institutions have arisen from democracy over time that actually control the democracy. And so in America we see the Republicans, the Democrats, we see candidates selected decades in advance to go there. This is why Trump has been such an unusual, because Trump has never been a politician. He's never served. He's never been on the left. He's never been indoctrinated in any of these arenas. For him to arrive and step into power blew the minds of the institutions that sit behind these parties in America. And that's that's the argument why they're trying to kill him all the time, because they don't want somebody in charge who they haven't groomed, controlled, brought in there. And I think you talked about Keir Starmer being selected decades ago by the Labour Party as somebody who would. Angela Rayner being selected by particular institutions in the Labour Party, the unions too. So you have all these institutionalised, driven, controlled democratic processes creating a non-democracy, in my view. So that to me, tearing that down is not an issue for me, because
not an issue for me.
Yeah.
So what we have at the moment is we have our elected politicians who give away their power to quangos, to external groups, for them to make decisions, also for them to take responsibility and take the blame when it goes wrong. In which case, why are we electing you as a politician? Why are you the climate minister when all you do is consult a climate quango, an NGO? Why are you the education minister when all you do is ask a quango what we should do about education? Why have we got you? So we need to get rid of all these external organisations, or dramatically reduce them and take away their powers. And we need to leave the powers with elected officials. Because once an elected official has the power, it means they take responsibility. It means they can be blamed. It also will lead to them taking better decisions and working harder, because they know the blame will lie on them. And if it turns out they're crap, and many will be, well, we vote them out, don't we, until we get someone better in. But at the moment, people who hold power in our country are never held accountable because they were never voted to have that power in the first place. That's what's warping our democracy. Because how do we get rid of these institutions? How do we change that institution? Don't forget, when we give politicians our power, we don't give it to them. We lend it to them with our vote. And we know we can take that power back anytime we like by voting you out. Can't do it with the Quangos and the NGOs and all these charities that are running stuff. They've taken our power and our rights, and we have no say over it. That needs to stop.
And those are the institutions, the civil service, the public sector. My brother, I think I was telling you, he came over from Holland. His wife works for a public sector organisation in Holland, and the story he was telling me about the person who runs the organisation, and it's kind of these people in these senior positions are unaccountable.
Yep.
They can do what the hell they want, basically. Nobody's checking their performance against any metric. In normal business, there are metrics, performance, things. So they're funded by governments, which is our money, Nick. It's our money. All these quangos, all these they're funded by governments. They get as much money as they want. Nobody is accountable. Nobody has to deliver anything. And there are thousands of these places. And it's, people are getting paid fortunes. They're all working from home. That is, to me, it actually makes me feel sick when I think about it. When I know how hard it is in business to make money, how hard you've got to work, how you've got to be accountable for everything. You've got to actually make profit. You've got to generate
how
that.
You put your house on the line.
Yeah.
I'm sure in the early days you had to get mortgages for you put your house on the line.
I had to sell my
Civil
first house.
servants don't put their house on any line. They don't put anything on the line.
Yeah.
And unsackable.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. I'd like to see if you've got the Minister of Education and the Department of Education, I'd like to see that political appointee who we vote in have the power to sack the top few levels of the department. Not all the way down. We don't want them sacking cleaners and sacking people who are being told by other managers what to do. But the first 1 or 2, 3 strands of managers, he should be able to sack them for competence and not doing as they're told. I don't see a problem with that. But our elected officials can't sack anyone in the civil service.
Yeah.
So the civil service do what they want.
Yeah.
Because you can't sack me anyway. That has to change. I think a minister should be able to sack senior civil servants in his department.
Well, I think what they should do is change the employment law. So in the public sector, you can sack somebody and they don't have the right to go to an employment tribunal. You should get rid of all their employment rights. Then that
too far.
No, I don't think it is too far.
Too far.
I think you get rid of their employment rights, because part of the problem is at the moment you can't sack anybody in the public sector. As soon as you sack them, they say, oh, it's racism, it's sexism, I was under stress or whatever. I mean, an example I heard just yesterday, somebody rang in to say they couldn't come into work today. The reason they couldn't come, this is in the public sector, the reason they couldn't come into work is because the neighbour's dog had died and the neighbour needed comforting. Yeah? So they get a day off work paid for that.
Council started bringing this in a few years ago. You can get paid leave now for the death of an animal.
Yeah, but this is the death of a neighbour's animal.
Yeah. Well, they would claim, well, it felt like my animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's going to say that's scandalous?
For an extra day off, I'd kill my neighbour's dog. I don't like animals anyway, so killing my neighbour's dog and get a day off.
So what I'm saying is, and this is you and I will differ. I'm looking for radical change. So apart from the fact I would wipe out the Labour and Tory party and let people start. For me, we change the system. Everybody has to vote. You paid 100 quid to go and vote on voting day. If you don't vote, it's a criminal offence, basically.
Like Australia.
Everybody has to vote. You're not limited to 2 parties, and it's proportional. More importantly, proportional representation. So then because I keep going over this example again. Lib Dems 3.5 million votes, 72 seats. Reform 4 million votes, 5 seats. That is the views. And I think if you brought that in as a start, then people would think we're going to go and vote now. We're actually going to go for somebody we want to vote for. And the second thing I'd do is just what I said: get rid of all employment rights in the public service. Anybody who works in the public sector, NHS, I don't care where it is, employment rights are gone basically. If you're sacked, you have no right of redress basically.
So let me follow.
So those are my two two radical approaches. So very simplistic.
Yeah.
But that's where I would start. So it's bring in proportional representation, make everybody vote, and take away employment rights for everybody in the public sector.
So public sector, all we have to do is ensure they're treated like people in the private sector. So keep their workers' rights, which they should. We just treat them like the private sector. But we can sack them if we can prove they need sacking. Very easy to prove. I've worked in the council. Half the people I worked with should be sacked for many, many reasons. So we don't need to find evidence to sack them. We can sack them if we just treat them like the private sector. So that's how we get around that. I'm not in favour of proportional representation. It's a simple solution to a very complicated issue. If we have proportional representation, it just means that smaller parties, fringe groups, have more power than they have now. Because when we have hung parliaments, they'll be the kingmakers and they'll have more power. Why is that a problem? Because in our country, things take time. So if you want something to be implemented, you've got to either woo the Conservatives or the Labour Party. Over time, you infiltrate those parties, you convince them it's the right thing to do, you get the public on board, and once you've got the public on board, the party then see this as a vote winner, will take it on board.
That's not happening though, is it? No,
so our system's not working at the moment, but that doesn't mean we can't get it working the way it should be working. Proportional representation will take us down a path that will make things a lot worse. Forcing people to vote I think if you live in a free country, in a free society, you should be free not to vote if you don't want to. I tell people all the time, you should vote. It's a civic duty. I talk about it in the book. People died so we could get the vote, and now you don't even want the vote. But let me put this to you: if everybody was forced to vote, so you would have a large, 20%, 30% of the population who don't vote now, who really don't want to vote, will be forced to vote. All it takes are the political parties to offer them something silly for them to vote for them. We're going to do this for you poor stupid people. And because they're poor and stupid, they're more likely to fall for it. So at the moment, politicians and parties do try to bribe us with stuff at every election cycle. It'd be even worse if we forced everybody to vote, because the people who are more susceptible to that are the ones we would be forcing to vote.
But you're assuming that only poor, stupid people... You're assuming that only poor and stupid people are the ones who don't vote. That's not the case, is it?
It's not all of them, but
I'm sure a lot
they will be they'll be heavily overrepresented.
I think you're making a bit of a flying leap there. The reality is a lot of people watching this now will have not voted. They won't vote because they've realised it's a waste of time. I think a lot of intelligent people don't vote at the moment.
Lots of people don't vote for many reasons.
Forcing people to vote won't work unless you have proportional representation as well. Because otherwise you'd end up with the same situation where they've got to go and vote, but they can only vote for Labour or Tory. So we'll vote Labour and look at the mess that's in. I think it's interesting. It's interesting because I can see what you're proposing in your book, and I can see you're looking for change or whatever. But I think my view now is the system is so broken, and I do get furious when I see how our money is wasted. When I see how we're going to talk about that later today, I'm getting more and more angry now about how all this money that we are generating in tax and everything is being spent and wasted by these people who are in power, who do not follow our wishes, basically. And I want everybody to get angry about it, and I want a radical change in this country. Whether that'll happen in my lifetime, I don't know.
It will. It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming.
I think so. Hopefully. Anyway, so we moved on. So, ladies and gentlemen, all good bookshops. Well, sorry, on Amazon.
Amazon bookshops. Nick Buckley, England's My England.
And the answers to everything are in that book. By the sound of it. It's from what I can't wait to read it. One of the things you talk about in your book, and it coincidentally is one of the first things to talk about today that I've got on my notes, is immigration.
Yeah.
And funnily, last episodes, did I mention, by the way, this is number 47?
Yeah.
Yes. In the last one we did, 46 or 45, I don't think I discussed immigration at all, which is unusual because we normally have it in our list of topics, basically.
We did, because we talked about illegal immigrants and immigrants in general hunting us in this country, picking us off one at a time.
Yes, that was France, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. I like that metaphor. I've actually got so many notes on it this week. I've got two sections: immigration and illegal immigration, or as they now call it,
irregular.
Yeah, regular immigration or irregular immigration, because it's no longer a crime, by the way. Matt Goodwin, who I think you know, he recently published something saying that apparently the latest thing is that actually this is illegal immigration. The migrants that are housed in hostels at the moment, or hotels, actually not hostels, because as we know, they're actually housed in very nice hotels most of the time. Because of accommodation issues, they've got to be housed in these hotels for another 3 years, which is going to cost us £4.7 billion.
Another 3 years that they've predicted doesn't mean the problem will be gone in 3 years' time.
Oh yeah.
Because we've got a housing crisis because of mass immigration. We're not building houses fast enough, and we haven't for 50 years.
Yeah.
And we're going to build more houses for these people. The government won't build these people houses because the government foolishly think they're going to solve this problem. So why build more houses? We're going to solve this. We're going to smash the gangs, by the way. And it's like, yeah, really.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, exactly. So they don't know what to do with it, but they also don't want to be looking like they're rewarding these people more than they're already doing. No government's got an answer for this. Tories didn't have the answer for 14 years. Labour's not got the answer. The answer is deportations, giving people nothing when they get here, locking them up, arresting them when they get here because they broke into the country. That's the only way. I talk about it in a book.
But this is what's getting me furious. The cost.
Yeah.
I think more than anything now.
4 billion.
Yeah.
1.5 billion to keep our pensioners warm every year.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So 3 years' money every year we're spending on housing people who shouldn't be in the country.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. This has been thrown into sharp relief by that 1.5 billion that we've taken off our.
We've now got something to compare everything with all the time.
Yeah, it's useful. It's actually very useful
because the word billion doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah, but if you're saying the money you're now going to spend on housing illegal immigrants is equivalent to 3 years heating the houses of little old ladies, that's very, very easy to understand.
It is, and it also shows where their priorities are.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that, and this is now why I'm starting to get really angry, because I'm seeing this prolific, profligate spending of this government, and you know my view is that Labour's same as Tories, they're the same bastards as far as I'm concerned. They're happy to announce they're going to be spending nearly £5 billion over the next 3 years housing illegal immigrants that they've allowed to get into this country, Nick. Yeah,
and if that's their prediction, it'll be a lot more than that. Yeah.
So it's kind of, we've allowed, because Labour supported the
refugees welcome.
Refugees welcome. They allowed this to happen, and they're now happy to say, and this is the sheer brass neck of it, isn't it? We're now happy to say, by the way, this is going to cost us $5 billion to look after this lot that we've let in for the next 3 years, which is coincidentally 3 times, 3 years of heating for little old ladies, and lots of little old ladies will die who would have made it through the 3 years if they'd had heating in the first year. So, and the fact they're just happy to talk about these things, and they will, worse than that, Nick, have budgeted this into their costs over the next 3 years, weren't they? Yeah?
Yeah.
So,
finance planning meeting, like, what are we going to spend today? Well, we're going to spend this much on people who shouldn't be in the country in the first place. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So, with something like, I've written this down somewhere, but we're something now like 22 trillion in debt in this country as a result of overspending. So what we talked about in previous episodes, where there's 40 grand per household in the UK that's generated every year, ostensibly to spend on us, is being pissed away, and worse than that, we've overspent from that by 20. So that 40 grand that should be going to everybody in your house, in my house, that's been spent on God knows what. We've spent more than that. We've probably spent 50 grand, and now we're 22 trillion in debt. We have the worst GDP, gross domestic product, per capita since the 1970s now. Yeah. And the
70s was a basket case decade.
It's a basket case. The population is now growing faster than the economy. And just another reminder for our gentle viewers, a low-wage migrant will cost us, by the age of 80, if they stay here, £438,000 of our cash.
Yeah, nearly £500,000 per immigrant by the time they reach 80.
Yeah, and that's now...
That's not including their spouses and their children and their dependents and the people they bring in after they get here.
And of course we now know it's a myth that we're bringing in all these high-skilled migrants, because even the ones that are coming in legally, the majority are low...
0.8 of legal migrants are engineers and 0.6 are doctors.
Yeah. And last year the net migration was 700,000 people. Yeah. The OBR also talk about something called the dilution of capital stock. Do you know what that is?
No.
Nick? So the dilution of capital stock is basically the overuse or the lack or the decay of things like hospitals, libraries, schools, education. So what they're saying when they're using this terminology, dilution of capital stock, what they're saying is the volume of migrants we're getting in here now is diluting our capital stock. It's not as effective as it can't be. It's not. It's overused. The NHS is overused. Schools are overused. Social housing is overused. Basically, the effectiveness of that capital. It's like having. I'll use a business. It's like having machine in your factory, the demand on the machine is so high, the capital value of it is diluted.
You're wearing it out.
You're wearing it out, basically. And that's what's happening. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They're wearing out. This
So a machine that should last 10 years, if you now use it twice as much, it's going to last 5 years.
So there's not just all this cost of these migrants. They're actually wearing out our national assets as well by the sheer volume of them. Since 1997, we've had net migration of 6 million people, but those numbers have been the biggest in the last couple of years, I think. I don't know if those numbers are right. That's what I was reading about.
I'd say it's a lot more than 6 million.
Yeah.
Because up to last year, the European Settled Status Scheme had registered 6 million Europeans staying here.
Oh, Europeans alone.
Yeah. 6 million.
Yeah.
There's at least a couple of million people in this country here illegally.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
There's new data out this week, and this is, again, relating to, this is legal immigration. Foreign nationals have a 27% higher imprisonment rate than native English people.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me. And, we know that by looking at the people in the jails, the nationalities of them. Yeah. Albanians are number one.
Yes, correct.
I read somewhere that we've nearly got as many Albanians in jail in this country as Albania does in Albania.
Correct, and that was something I was going to mention. Right. So there's a list of countries with their basically imprisonment rates. Top of the list are the Albanians.
And that's by far.
Yes,
it's a huge jump from second to one. Albania.
So I think English people right down here, and it's per head, per 100,000 people. Albanians are way up there. Yeah. The Albanian, you're right, the Albanian prison population in the UK now is nearly as big as the total Albanian prison population, which really suggests to us that their criminals are just coming, they're shipping their criminals over here. Worse than that, we're taking them, aren't we?
They're shipping their criminals over here because this is rich pickings.
Yes.
This is, again, the lion on the African savannah, prowling, looking for easy meat.
Yeah. Possibly a hyena rather than a lion. I think a lion's probably a bit too noble. Yeah.
But they know there's not much in Albania, money-wise and stuff like that. There's still criminals there. So they, like the Vikings did as well, they go out searching for better land to rob, steal, rape, and many even in the UK now.
Yeah. So I think, so what I'm not getting now, Nick, perhaps you can enlighten me. We're now getting all these stats. We're now understanding that immigrants are costing us money. They're not giving us any benefit. Why are the people not on the streets rioting now? Because this has to stop, this insanity.
It does, and it will, and it takes a long time to get into the public psyche, but it's happening. We've had riots now over the stabbings of those 3 girls in Southport. Backfired a bit, so British people now, English people are on the back foot a little bit, going, I don't want to demonstrate because if it all turns violent I could get 3 years in jail. So that has backfired, but people will get over that and will start coming out again when tragedies occur, not when stats get released, but when tragedies occur.
No, but the stats will kind of reinforce that tragedy.
No, absolutely.
Because then the placards will say immigration costs us more than, I think
absolutely. More and more people, we're going to hit a tipping point, and once we hit a tipping point, change will come very fast. Where that tipping point is, we don't know till we hit it. But all these things we talk about add into the tipping point. Yeah. I read somewhere that we're now spending hundreds of millions on Albanian prisons because we've got to get them up to a higher standard so we can send more Albanian prisons back to Albania. We did the same with Jamaica and some of the Caribbean islands. We spent hundreds of millions doing up their jails so we could send their citizens back in their jails.
How much money are we wasting?
We're just idiots.
We're pissing it away,
led by fools.
Yeah.
The way we go through our taxes and what we spend money on. And the reason why we do it is it's an easy solution. It's a solution now because I want to be elected again in 3-4 years time. Doesn't matter, it's not value for money. Doesn't matter, it doesn't stop the problem. It just looks like I've done something on the problem, doesn't it? Don't I look good? Well, it doesn't solve the problem. Why are we spending money on other people's jails. If they're citizens of that country, then deport them.
Yeah.
The fact that their jails are no good is no concern of us. How are Albanians in the country in the first place? Because the Albanians are not part of the EU, not at war, no genocide going on, no persecution going on.
Yeah.
Why do we allow them here? And did you see the case this week in court? Illegal immigrant Albanian comes to the country, commits a crime, gets arrested, does jail time, gets deported, comes back illegally, marries a Lithuanian girl here, has a baby, taken it to the High Court, can't deport him now, quality of life. He's a criminal, already broke laws here, done time here, got deported, come back illegally, married a foreigner, not even an English girl, he married a foreigner, had a kid with a foreigner, and now the court says we can't deport him because he's got rights and he's the right to family life. We're mental for allowing any of this to happen. Going back to my very first point when I talk about the book, English men are to blame. I know they didn't do it all themselves, but the fact we allowed any of this to ever start and continue.
But if I'm not sure that's fair, and what I mean by that is, I've been with some guys today doing some work on my house, and these guys are sparkies and plumbers or whatever. How can he be to blame? And these are nice guys, nice, hard-working English white guys. I'm happy to say it, English white guys. How are they to blame for this, Nick?
Individually, they're not to blame as an individual, but as English men. All men, their number one role is to be a protector and a provider. That's what we'll be designed to do. Protect and provide. We've not protected this country. We've not protected our families. We've not protected our community. We've not protected our women, our girls. We failed. We haven't done it.
There
may be lots of reasons why we've not done it.
Yes.
And there may be barriers to stop us doing it. But all that doesn't really matter because we didn't do what we should have done.
Yes, but we have done that, haven't we? We have worked our lives. I've worked my entire life for my wife and my family and the kids and all that sort of stuff. I've worked hard. I've done all that. I've also happened to vote for a party that has said it would do certain things to protect me here as well. That party hasn't done what I'd wanted them to do. It's not me. I've done my bit, Nick. I've worked really hard for my whole life. I've never stopped working. I've done my bit. I've paid my tax or whatever, and I'm paying my tax to a government that I voted for that's told me it's going to stop illegal immigration, that's told me it's going to get more housing, that's told me it's going to do this and the other. And none of those governments in my lifetime
have ever done it.
Yeah. So I don't think it's our fault. I think it's the system and the institutions that need tearing down. They're the ones to blame. If
we don't put the responsibility upon English men, we have what we have now, which is it's always someone else's fault.
Oh yeah, no, I think the solution lies in the hands of Englishmen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the message I'm trying to get out to people.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear anything else.
Yeah.
I want to hear Englishmen now saying this is what I'm going to do to start changing this country, improving this country.
So I think we're actually, you and I are circling back round to the same position now, because that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying yes, this has happened. Here we are. The answer now lies in our hands. And it began after the Southport killings, when people started taking to the streets and saying this. Now, we've been suppressed. There's no doubt about it. We've been suppressed and oppressed in that since that happened. But we have to gird our loins and come out again, don't we, basically?
Yeah.
I think,
and not make the same mistakes this time.
And not make the same mistakes,
So if you're on a demonstration and the idiots next to you want to throw bottles at the police, it's down to the people in that demonstration to go, you three, you throw stuff like that and I'm going to smack you. People in those demonstrations have to police those demonstrations. Otherwise, the psychopaths, the drunks, the lunatics, the violent criminals will take charge. And it's another opportunity ruined of changing this country, because then it's all branded as far right, lunatics, racist, and we can't win by fighting the state.
Yeah.
Because the state's too big and powerful. We can't win like that. We can only beat the state by showing the country, our citizens and the world, how unfair the state is, how tyrannical the state is, how they treat us, how that we're non-violent, and look at what the police are doing to us. That's how you beat a gigantic state like we have now. We can't beat them by taking them on fisticuffs. They're too big, they're too powerful.
Yeah.
We've got to shame them. That's what Gandhi did.
Yeah, yeah.
When he took
So
on the British
I was actually
Empire.
thinking about Gandhi.
That's what
The
Martin Luther King did.
paedophile.
Well, was he? Well, I've not heard paedophile. I've heard lots of other stuff. I've not heard that. But Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King was special. Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah, but when he'd go on demonstrations and tell everybody, put your Sunday best on.
Yes.
Because I want them to see us and look at us with respect. Put your Sunday best on.
He was phenomenal, wasn't he? I went, and interestingly, people always talk about racism and things like that, and very few people talk about Martin Luther King and his message, his fundamental message, wasn't it? Judge me not by the colour of my skin, but by the content
of my character.
By the content of my character.
But that's out of fashion now.
Yeah, but it's out of fashion.
Yeah. These woke idiots don't like Martin Luther King.
No, they don't.
Don't like Gandhi.
No.
Because these people...
They didn't talk about identity politics.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not on their side.
Yeah, yeah.
And Martin Luther King as well had a reputation of being a womanizer as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he was a married man.
I still liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I went to Memphis?
I've been to Memphis. I met the second most mental person I've ever met in Memphis.
I don't think I was there at the time.
No, you weren't.
You can tell your story in a minute, but my story. So, of course, I went to Memphis to see Graceland.
Yeah.
Which was fantastic.
I thought it was tacky.
Yes, that's why it was fantastic. No, just going there and knowing Elvis had lived there, I just thought it was fantastic. I love Elvis. But I also went to the motel where Martin Luther King was shot. Did you go there?
Yes, the Levain
Motel. I would recommend our viewers to go there.
It's a museum now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I signed the papers, not papers, when they're collecting signatures for something, I signed that as a visitor when it was not a museum.
Oh, right, it was still a hotel.
Yeah, there was people camping outside long term wanting it to be a museum. And I signed the paper saying I think it should be.
That must have been quite a long time ago. You're older than
88.
You were in your mid-30s then, I would imagine. You walk around the corner and it's just there.
Yeah.
And they had the cars outside, so it looked just like the day it happened. It was a phenomenal thing.
You stand in the car park and that's the balcony.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was, and of course, we see these things when we're young, don't we? We see these images of this, and it kind of seems remote, and then you go there, and I thought it was...
Well, he was killed the year I was born, 68.
Really? Yeah, fascinating, I thought. But he was a great man.
Well, I met a woman there who...
I'm not sure we want to hear this story, Nick.
It's an okay story.
All right,
I met a woman there who was convinced she has coffee every Friday with Elvis, and he's still alive.
Did you go to where she went on a Friday?
No.
I would have said, can I come with you this Friday? Did you not? No.
I don't think Elvis was going to be there. But she was absolutely convinced. Looks fairly normal.
Yeah.
Wasn't a drug addict.
Yeah.
And she was, I have coffee with Elvis. He's still alive. He just doesn't want anyone really to know.
What's he talking about these days?
Yeah, I can't remember now. It's a long time ago we had that conversation.
See, that fascinates me. I would have loved to have gone with her on a Friday to the coffee shop. But she probably would have said, oh, he's not turning up today because you're here or something. Yes. That would have been That's a good story, that. Why were we talking about Elvis and... Oh, we were talking about... I can't remember how we got there. I'll move on to the second part of this, which is... So the first section I just talked about was about immigration, but I want to move on to illegal immigration or... Irregular. They're lovely people. And I saw a phrase in I can't remember where I read it, somebody commented on it. It was an article. And they described the dinghy, the boats, as sperm-like dinghy ejaculations. And I thought that was a beautiful imagery, that. Because it is like that. They're constantly being fired at us.
And when they pull up at the beach, they all
Yes, exactly. So these dinghies are fired at us from the bloody French, and then they ejaculate onto our shores, these groups of...
Did you see the stat the other day, Labour government taking credit that there's been a reduction in boats coming across?
No.
Until someone commented, yes, that's true, but the boats are getting bigger.
Boats are getting bigger, yeah. Because they've not smashed again. So anyway, did you know that on Saturday the 5th of October, Guess how many migrants crossed on that one day?
Was it 970?
Yeah, it was just under 1,000 basically. So that's a record apparently compared to the last big number. But I want to pursue this cost thing, okay? So for my own amusement, let's assume those 1,000 migrants all stay in the UK and they live to 80. Clearly they're going to be in hotels or whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's assume those...
Let me put that into context.
Okay.
So 1,000 migrants, all young men, turned up on Saturday.
Yes.
100 Spanish conquistadors turned up in Mexico and overthrew the Aztec Empire.
Yes. Yeah.
100
Yes.
Spanish conquistadors overthrew the Aztec Empire.
Yeah.
And we've got 1,000 landing on our shores.
On one day.
On one day.
Yeah, I think there was a slight difference there. Conquistadors were far more sophisticated, well educated, well tooled up in terms of ammunition, and the Aztecs were fairly primitive.
But how many hundreds of thousands of illegals are in the country now? Hundreds of thousands of them.
I'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've raised that. So, for my own amusement, I'm assuming those 1,000 people who arrived on that one day are going to be here till they're 80. And given the state of our government, our crappy government, that's probably the case. How much do you think that will cost the British taxpayer for those just that one day, that one boat, if they live to 80?
That's 500 million.
Correct. You're good at maths, aren't you? That's impressive. I have heard you being called Nick the Human Calculator before. That is actually correct. So if those 1,000, one day, Nick, if those 1,000 remain on our shores till they're 80, basically taking our money, our tax or whatever, they'll cost us £500 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a shocking number, don't you think?
I'd say it's going to be more than that, because that's if they don't bring anybody with them. Because once they're here and once they get settled status, you can bring 8 people. So each one of them can bring 8 more people, family members, all legally.
Wow. This year there have been, I'm going to put you under pressure now, 27,000 have arrived this year
on the boats.
On the boats. How much is that going to cost us if they live to 80?
27,000, that's...
Yeah, you said it then, you said it.
13.5 billion.
Correct.
Yeah.
£13.5 billion that's going to cost us. So this is the scale. This is when, because we talk about boats arriving or whatever. Do people actually understand that how much this is going to cost us? Do you think?
So
have they got the idea?
13.5 billion is a whole decade of heating allowance for pensions. That's a whole decade.
Yes. So what we're saying is, the illegal immigrants that this government has let in so far this year, the cost of looking after them would fund our old age pensioners for a decade.
Yes.
That's scandalous, isn't it?
When you put it in those terms, it really, really is. We should use this winter fuel allowance all the time now to compare.
Yeah, I think it's a great
to put numbers into perspective.
It's like when they say a country that it's the size of Wales, or the size. Yes. Oh yeah, it's that one, isn't it? You made the good point, just because, of course, now what the left wing progressives will now be saying, oh yeah, but there's women and children, and they're all, and by the way, they're going to contribute to the economy and all that bollocks. So 90% of the small boat arrivals this year are men, male, basically. So we
see that on TV.
This image of the fact, there's women and children, it's bollocks, basically. However, conveniently, and this is a tragic thing, so I don't mean convenient in a sense, but conveniently, when they report somebody drowning, it's always a woman and a child. So there was an incident recently, and it might have been last week, where a child was killed. What it didn't report...
I think it was 2 children.
2 children.
Died on the boat, and the woman was raped, I think, thrown overboard.
Yes. What it didn't report... So the headlines from our fabulous left-wing institutionalised media were a woman and 2 children killed crossing. What it didn't say is the children were trampled to death on the boat, and they say the woman was raped and thrown overboard. Yeah. And this is the bullshit we're being fed all the time by the government's media on.
We'll forget all those migrants. The reason why they're young men is because once they get here, they then send for the families.
Yeah, yeah. So, again, the left-wing progressives will be saying, oh, yeah, but most of those people won't even be granted asylum because they're, they'll be sent back, they'll be assessed by this very sophisticated border, Home Office border thing.
No one's sent back.
Illegals in Britain are 3 times more likely to be granted asylum than the rest of Europe. So we're not only getting them over here, we're more likely to see 3 times more likely, which is a massive percentage than anywhere in the rest of Europe. So even the rest of Europe are saying, forget it, we're not staying here, mate. So they say bugger off, and the next minute they're on a boat heading for England. Yeah. We've imagined, or everybody said, oh, this is just fantasy, it's not real. But it's the reality. All the things we've thought are happening are actually happening.
It's worse than that. So we are...
That needs to be your catchphrase.
Yeah, it's worse than that. So even though we're granting asylum 3 times as much as other countries, the ones here who don't get asylum stay. They're just not given asylum status.
They're in the hotels.
They still stay here, so it's not like they leave.
Yeah.
So it makes no difference if we grant them asylum or not. None of them leave.
None of them leave. Correct. We've sent 3 to Rwanda and they came back. Now, obviously, these pitiful migrants who've come from very oppressive states deserve to stay because obviously they've been oppressed, and we know they're oppressed because we know where they come from, don't we? Except we don't, Nick, because guess what percentage of these pitiful Channel migrants managed to lose their passports on the perilous journey?
100% of them.
I'm going to say it's worse than that, but it's not. It's 98%.
Right.
Basically, you're dead right.
So what you're saying is 2% of them are so stupid they throw away their passports in their own pockets.
Well, I'm going to try and be benevolent here and maybe say that 2%, maybe they are genuine. Maybe those are the genuine oppressed ones, I don't know. But you're right. Basically, so you've got these young guys, 1,000 of them arriving last Saturday, and they are men, because we now know they're all men, who are going to cost us £500,000 a pop, so they're 80. And all of them don't have passports, basically. I mean, it's just scandalous, isn't it?
And that's because it makes processing them harder.
Yeah.
So if you've got a passport saying you're from Turkey, well, you're not going to get asylum. We're going to, we might end up deporting you. But if you throw away your passport and then say I'm from Syria, right, this is a lot harder now. So it's just a ploy to make it harder for the British to assess them, and they stay and they're here longer.
What? Why is no one talking about this?
It's been going on for decades. Numbers have increased.
Yeah.
Well, the numbers of the boats have actually gone down the last couple of years. It's still silly figures, but they're not as high as they were a couple of years ago. But illegal immigration, no one wants to talk about these problems because none of our politicians have got solutions for them. That's why no one talks about it, because I can't talk about a problem if I can't offer an answer.
But what I don't understand is why don't the opposition talk about it? Why aren't Reform talking about it now in Parliament?
I'm sure Reform will, but the answer why will the opposition not talking about it? Because the opposition always know I'm going to be there next cycle.
Yeah.
And if I talk about it now, they're going to hold me accountable, and there's no answer to this. So none of us will talk about it.
They're kind of going, I don't worry, I'll keep quiet because I know I'm going to be over there next year.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that because we've all been doing the same thing for the past 14
they're
years.
Telepathetic.
Yeah, certainly pathetic. So an Oxford University study has recently found that Britain has more. You might be shocked by this one. I might have caught you by surprise on this one. An Oxford University found that Britain has more illegal migrants than any country in Europe. Did you know that, Nick?
I didn't, and that has surprised me. I'd like to look at their research and how they work this out, because it's very difficult to work out illegal immigrants because they illegally don't know where they are. I would have thought European countries would have had more because it's easier to get to. I know we have a huge problem in this country. I don't think it's 700,000. I think it's a couple of million in this country illegally. I haven't
told you the number yet, but it's a good guess. You're close.
Right, I think I must have read the article then. Yeah. They've done studies, I've been talking about this before, about how many people are in certain cities in the UK, and these studies always work out there's several million more than we ever thought there was. London's a good example. I think it's like 2 million more in London if you base it on
Oh, you said on the sewage.
Sewage and how much we're putting in there. Supermarket sales, how much toilet rolls being sold, how much potatoes and rice and staples. Because you look at a supermarket, you go, that's the catchment area. Well, we think there's 100,000 people there. Well, no, we're selling enough stuff as if there's 120,000 people in this area. So they've done all these studies and work out there's something like 2 million people extra in London who are not on the books. And if not on the books, it means they're illegal.
This study has worked out, I don't know, or you might need to see their detailed analysis. There's 745,000 illegal migrants in this country. And that is 1 in 100 of the population.
Yeah.
So when you're out walking in the streets, 1 in 100 of the people you see will be not a migrant, an illegal migrant. Yeah. But you're saying you believe that to be more.
I believe it's a lot more than that.
But even that is scandalous, isn't it, Nick? That's
when you put it in percentage figures, it is.
Yeah. 1 in 100 people out there.
1% of the population
is in illegal.
Shouldn't be here.
Yeah. It's shocking.
Yeah.
Of course, and if there's 745,000 illegal migrants, and each one costs $500,000 to the 80, can you calculate that one? And just a little warning in advance, I haven't actually calculated this one, so I can't tell you. This is hard because you multiple, your zeros are getting bigger and bigger here, aren't they? This is
350, 367
billion.
367 billion.
I think it is. I think it's 300. I think that's going to cost us £350 billion. I've not calculated.
That would pay the heating allowance for our pensioners for 275 years.
That would pay the heating allowance for everybody, not just the pensioners. But that would give us free heating for the next 50 years. And France apparently has got 300,000, which sounds a bit low to me. Especially given that we discussed last week that 700,000 potentially roaming around.
How do you count people who are illegally and have got their head down? How do you count them? I don't know.
I think you estimate it based on typical border crossings over a period of time or whatever, or estimates. There must be data on that stuff.
Yeah, I've got no idea how they work.
Germany's close, 700,000, and I'm not surprised that Germany's close because remember Angela Merkel said. I can't remember what her term, some German thing about refugees.
Yeah, but don't forget, they all entered legally.
Yes, they all entered. No, oh, sorry, those are legal, yeah.
Yeah, that was this is illegal. 2 million.
Sorry, yes.
All legal.
Yes, so this is legal.
These are people who've sneaked in the country.
Yes, correct.
Hence why it's hard to know how many it is, because they sneak in.
Yeah. I want to kind of finish this section. I'm conscious of our time. We've gone a little bit over, but just... I want to give a kind of vision of what the elite and the media think about immigration. Just a couple of snippets that I'm going to give the quotes, and then I want you to guess which organisation or which person has said this. So it's only two, but first of all, and this is a genuine quote: if white Britons, like yourself, Nick, learn more from the Muslim community, the UK will be a better country. Any idea who said that? You may have heard that before.
No. No idea.
Anna Soubry MP.
I hate her, yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
I think she was pissed at the time. So allegedly she was pissed at the time.
I mean, there's a little bit of truth in that. There's a little bit of truth in that. None of us are perfect. Gosh. None of our cultures are perfect. There's always something other cultures doing that will be better than how we're doing it. So let's look at the Muslim culture there. I'll pick two things straight away. First thing is how they look after their old people. They move them into their houses and have extended families and take care of them, and very rarely stick them in death camps. Old folks homes. So there's something. So we can learn from other communities, but if we were judging communities, then, and we're going to stack them from the worst to the top, then there's only, ours would be at the top.
Yeah.
And it's flawed, but every other culture is
it's
even more flawed.
Of course, there's bits you can take from everything.
Yeah.
You could say the same about Japan or whatever, but that's not the point. It's the sentiment stinks, doesn't it? You know, white Britons, as far as I'm concerned, are far better and always will be than any Muslim community. It's not even a comparison to make.
That's self-hate.
Yeah, it is.
What she's basically saying is there's nothing special about us, but there is about Muslim communities.
Yeah.
If only we're more like Muslim communities, we would be a better community ourselves. It's self-hate.
Yeah.
It's white liberal women like her who have led the vanguard to destroy this country.
This is from a media publication, and I think you'll probably guess it, so that gives you a clue. We keep hearing about legitimate concerns over immigration. The truth is, there are none.
The only thing I could guess would be Guardian.
Correct.
Right,
That's what the Guardian said. So the Guardian believes there are no legitimate concerns over immigration.
And wrong, but I can understand where they're coming from with that. That's because they have a world view, a communist, left-wing, progressive view of the world, as in, we're all equal, we're all the same, can't we all just get along, group hug everybody? And it's like, well, no. You might group hug some people, but as you're hugging them, they're going to be stabbing you to death.
And this is just something I read. This isn't actually a quote, but just something I read just to finish on. And I think we talked last week about the fact I was in Handsworth in Birmingham, and I think you told me afterwards, and I think, or we discussed it, that was where there were the slogans painted on the walls saying "No whites" and "No whites allowed." Did you know it was in Handsworth?
Oh no,
it wasn't in London. Apparently, it was there. But this person writing it said "No whites" or "No whites allowed," and they've put quite rightly, it could easily be the BBC mission statement or the Labour Party slogan. Yes. And I thought that was the perfect thing to say. Anyway, so we've kind of gone over a bit here, and we've only really talked about immigration today after not talking about it. But I think if we just end this edition 47 here, Nick Buckley MBE, author of England,
another plug.
My England,
yes,
in all great Amazon stores.
Yeah. Book it online now. Buy one, and then if you see me, I'll even sign it for you.
Okay.
And then let me know if you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Nick Buckley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.